what do you see as the main reason or reasons people end up drinking too often or too much?
Yeah, well, I think that, there's a lot of things at play. One thing I'll mention is this idea that we are so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. So we're looking for ways to distract and numb. And so we have this idea, and I'm sure you see this in your business all the time, that like stress is bad. And it's like, no, not all stress is bad, but we've been, taught that, and it's been modeled and it's been marketed. And so, oh my goodness, we're so afraid of feeling stressed. So take a drink, you'll feel relaxed. Disconnection, feeling lonely and isolated. We've been told that alcohol will make us feel more connected. And it's just not true. Alcohol actually creates more isolation. We withdraw more. But we've been told, like, if you're uncomfortable, alcohol is the answer to stress, pain, all of these things. And so I think that's a big part of it, is that we just haven't been taught enough tools. And we've been sold sort of this perception that we should never be uncomfortable. So if you're uncomfortable, we should distract. And we see this, with behaviors from, scrolling on social media to shopping to gambling to other drug use in addition to alcohol. And so we have been taught that, we are weak and we can't cope, and cravings are going to be overwhelming. And so it's so much easier to drink. So we have this sort of easy button, and that's where I think we can find ourselves falling into this. Another way to sort of say it is like we drink due to unmet needs. So we sometimes see this with food, right, as well.
Yeah.
Like when people say, I just found myself grazing in the kitchen. It's like, gosh, we just need to take a step back and say, what do I really need? What's happening here? Am I feeling lonely? Would I be better off getting a hug from my husband? Would I be better off calling a friend? Would I be better off, finding a way to feel connected versus eating or drinking to overcome this? So these unmet needs are really powerful. And when we stop drinking, there they are. And so that is the second part of the journey, is why support can be so helpful, because we're not taught, or we're not used to having to sit in these feelings, these emotions, these experiences without our tool of alcohol.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I see in my own kind of social circles, I know a lot of DJs, and I'm not going to say most of them because that wouldn't be true, but some of them cannot get up on stage until they've had a fair few drinks inside them.
Yeah.
So again, as you just said, there's an unmet need. Well, what's the unmet need there? Well, they're not confident. They're not confident without a drink inside them. And it's the drink that gives them this false confidence, I guess the other thing that I tend to see in my own work is when someone's had some kind of emotional trauma, and they might use alcohol as the drug of choice to numb the pain.
Yeah.
And quite often they don't even know that that's why they're doing it. The trauma might even be subconscious. It might have been something that happened when they were very young. They don't even remember it, but in the subconscious, that, well, something's not right here. I need to medicate this. And the fact that alcohol is legal, even though it's probably the most dangerous drug there is, a lot of people find that that's the accepted drug of choice.
Yes.
It's socially acceptable to use alcohol because it's a legal drug, right? So they're kind of the two reasons I think I see most myself. But I guess similar to the confidence thing as well is, in a social situation, again, if people don't have the confidence to go and speak to someone they don't know, think typical bar or nightclub situation, people use alcohol to get over their fear of probably the fear of someone telling them to go away, right?
Yeah.
And without a drink inside them, they probably wouldn't approach someone in that situation they don't know. Again, it's their lacking confidence.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a coach called Dan Sullivan who has a framework called the 4 C's. And it's super interesting because confidence comes last in the 4 C's. So this is really the other way that I'll say it to explain this more is that I like to think of the drinking is that the behavior of drinking comes last. Like when I work with clients, that's the last thing we work on. We work on the thoughts, we work on the emotions that are driving the behavior and the habits, of course, the habit loop, versus the actual stop drinking. Because if you stop drinking, you can white knuckle that. You can, use willpower for a period of time. But until you change the emotions and thoughts behind the behavior, you will most likely just go back to drinking, or you might be miserable not drinking like I thought I would be. And so that is, it's really important to think about that. And so when we think in terms of confidence, like people think, well, I should be able to go into these social situations not drinking with confidence. But that actually is the last thing that happens. We start with commitment. So we say, I choose to go into this, social scene, and this is my intention is to go and to experience it. And then the second C is courage. It's going to take a little bit of courage to walk into that room without your old crutch of alcohol. And then the third is capability. So it takes practice and practice and practice. And then we get to confidence. And that's the way life always works. But with alcohol, we think we can bypass all of that and get straight to confidence.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like, what we see nowadays. It's that instant gratification. It's I'm not willing to do the work. I just want it now. Mm-hmm. And alcohol kind of does that with those 3 C's, right? Oh, I don't have to go, the 4 C's. I don't have to go through those 4 C's. I can just have a few drinks.
Yep.
It means I don't have to do the work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that. That's a really good point because, we are trying to sort of bypass. And you're right. We think that, again, going back to we don't do discomfort. We don't do hard work. We just do the easy button.
Mm. Yeah, it's good that, we're starting to see, certainly in the health arena, more and more people talking about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. And there's lots of talk now about, hot and cold therapy, and obviously working out is a form of discomfort, but that is slowly kind of seeping through now, and you're seeing more and more people consciously going out of their way to be uncomfortable because it obviously makes you more robust at the end of the day.
I'm curiously about where do you see this alcohol conversation with like functional medicine and in the medical field, because I had this very naive idea that I would go out when I first started my sober coaching business and I would talk to wellness professionals and I would help them have this conversation with their clients. And so I thought, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be so good. And then I went to the wellness professionals. They said, we don't want to have that conversation. And I went, oh.
I can imagine why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do you see that changing at all? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, the reason why I think most health professionals wouldn't want to have that conversation is because they probably have a bit of a drink issue themselves. Or maybe not an issue, but they probably drink more than they should, let's say. Mm-hmm. But I would say most of the professionals in my circles are probably people that either don't drink at all or drink very little anyway. So I think if you're a practitioner that doesn't drink, it's much easier to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm not someone that goes out of my way and says, oh, you must not drink. I just give them the information and let them make their own decision. I mean, there are situations where I might say, look, if you want to achieve a result, you have to go for a while where you don't drink. I work with a lot of people with acne. If you've got acne, you want to get rid of it, you've got to go alcohol free for at least a while. If you're on an antifungal diet, you can't have alcohol, right?
Right.
So there are, or you've got cancer, you can't have alcohol. So there are situations where, I would say, look, if you want the result that you're coming to me for, this is what you're going to have to do. But for most people, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say you have to stop drinking alcohol. But I would certainly get them to to log what they eat and what they drink, and then to get them to monitor how they feel after they've eaten, after they've drunk. So, you know, how does it affect their appetite? How does it affect their energy levels? How does it affect their emotions? And what tends to happen is most clients just naturally start to drink less. You know, it's written in black and white in front of them. They notice every time they have a drink, they don't feel so good. You know, there's someone I'm working with at the moment who's very recently just decided to stop drinking, certainly for a while, which is quite interesting because he's Irish, just to hit every stereotype of an Irishman there. Yeah, and I never suggested to him to not drink. It was his decision. I'd never put it out there to him, but he just came to that conclusion himself. He's like, well, I feel much better not having a drink.
Yeah, and I don't tell people not to drink either. You know, when people come to me, one of the questions I always ask them is, what does success look like for you with this area around drinking? And many, many people in the beginning will say, well, I just want to be able to drink occasionally. And it's like, okay, well, in order to learn how to drink occasionally, you have to take a break. You can't go from drinking a lot to drinking a little. You know, you need a period of time to explore, how do I feel different? How do I learn to drink occasionally? I've still got to go through all of the, how do I handle my emotions without alcohol? How do I handle stress without alcohol? How do I handle daily life without alcohol? You're never going to do that with drinking once a week versus drinking every night. It just doesn't work. And so, yeah, it's fascinating. And I just like to think of, you know, true wellness, I think of as alcohol-free living, because we see that alcohol affects every system in your body: heart health, immune system, gut health, you know, neurotransmitters, your brain, blood sugar regulation, which can affect all of those things that we see. And so we forget that alcohol is having this huge impact. And as you said, if we can have someone take even just a short break, 14, 30 days, first of all, it's really a good litmus test to see how difficult it is to stop. And it's also super interesting to see that people will do these challenges and then they'll go back to drinking on day 31 saying, well, that means I don't have a problem. And so the question is, what are your thoughts during this period of time when you're not drinking? What are your thoughts about drinking again? And that is such an interesting place to just explore. And so, and it doesn't work to tell people not to drink. They do what they want.
Yeah.
They do what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say, oh, I do dry January every year, so therefore I don't have a drink problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, well, okay. What about the other 11 months of the year that you drink every single day?
Yeah.
I guess that's, again, that's the denial, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really easy to talk ourselves into. And what's so interesting about denial is that we often think, we've been taught to think of alcohol as something that we deserve. And so when we move away from alcohol and drink less or take a break, we think we're denying ourselves. And so we really have to pay attention to, I talk about it, FOMO versus JOMO, right? So the fear of missing out versus the joy of missing out. Like, I find it joyful to miss out on hangovers, on blackouts, on missing the second half of the movie, on indigestion, on spending money on alcohol. That's joyful for me that I get to miss out on all of that. And so it really is just paying attention to what we're telling ourselves and asking, is that really true? Am I missing out?